Let's talk about one of the most secretive and controversial factions within the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Xenarite tech priests. In a galaxy where technological knowledge is worshipped as divine truth, where even the most minor modifications to sacred blueprints are seen as heresy, the idea of integrating alien technology into the Mechanicus' sacred machines is nothing short of blasphemy. Yet, there exists a sect that dares to do the unthinkable. The Xenarites, radical tech priests, who believe that the greatest advancements in technology lie not in the crumbling relics of the dark age of technology, but in the strange, forbidden wonders of Xenos civilizations. But just how far have they gone? Are they simply scavengers of lost knowledge, or have they crossed the line between understanding and outright corruption? And perhaps the biggest question of all, if they have truly unlocked the secrets of alien engineering, could they hold the key to humanity's survival or its damnation? To understand the Xenarites, we need to go deep into the shadows of the Adeptus Mechanicus, into the hidden vaults, forgotten forges, and the minds of those willing to risk everything for progress. Let's start by figuring out who these radical tech priests really are and what makes them so dangerous to both the Imperium and themselves. The Xenarites are one of the most enigmatic and controversial factions within the Adeptus Mechanicus. They are not just a rogue splinter group or some minor cult on the fringes of Mechanicum doctrine. No, these tech priests exist within the very heart of the machine cult, operating in the shadows, hiding in plain sight among their more orthodox brethren. To many, they are dangerous heretics, a cancer within the Mechanicus that threatens the purity of the Omnissiah's holy works. But to others, they are visionaries, willing to go where no one else dares in the pursuit of knowledge. At their core, Xenarites hold a belief that goes against everything the Adeptus Mechanicus stands for. While the vast majority of tech priests worship the machine god and follow the strict, rigid teachings of the cult Mechanicus, the Xenarites look beyond the Imperium's borders for enlightenment. They believe that alien technology, Xenos artifacts, weapons, and even entire philosophies of engineering holds the potential to elevate humanity beyond its current stagnation. And they're not entirely wrong. The Imperium is a crumbling giant, bound by dogma and fear of progress. Every piece of technology they use is a relic of a better time, copied and recopied without true understanding. Meanwhile, the galaxy is full of civilizations that have advanced far beyond what the Mechanicus considers possible. The Eldar, the Necrons, even the hated Tau, all of them wield technologies that are leaps ahead of what the Imperium can produce. And the Xenarites want that knowledge, no matter the cost. Of course, this philosophy makes them the enemies of just about everyone. The Mechanicus despises them because they reject the dogma that the STCs, the standard template constructs of humanity's golden age, are the only true source of technological advancement. To a traditional tech priest, the idea of integrating alien knowledge into the sacred works of the Omnissiah is outright blasphemy. It is a rejection of everything the machine cult believes in. And then there's the Inquisition, particularly the Ordo Xenos, which sees the Xenarites as a massive threat to imperial purity. From their perspective, these tech priests are dangerously close to becoming outright Xenos sympathizers, or worse, falling to corruption and becoming something even more dangerous than the aliens themselves. But the truth is, the Xenarites are not some unified faction with a single goal. They are a loose network of radicals, scholars, and scavengers, each with their own reasons for walking this forbidden path. Some genuinely believe that integrating alien technology is the only way for humanity to survive in a galaxy where everyone else is more advanced. Others are pragmatists, using Xenos tech purely as a tool, not out of ideology, but necessity. Then there are the extremists, those who go so far into the depths of Xenos knowledge that they start to question if humanity is truly superior at all. These are the ones the Mechanicus fears most, for they walk the razor's edge between forbidden knowledge and outright treason. What makes the Xenarites so interesting is how they manage to survive within the Mechanicus. Unlike other radical groups, they are not an obvious heretical sect with clear signs of corruption. Many Xenarites are high-ranking magi who have spent decades, even centuries, building their influence within Forge worlds. They operate in secrecy, hiding their true beliefs behind a mask of orthodoxy. Some disguise their experiments as mere research, carefully wording their reports so they don't attract the wrong kind of attention. Others work through proxies, hiring rogue traders, mercenaries, and even criminal syndicates to obtain alien relics without ever revealing their own involvement. It's a dangerous game, but they are masters of deception, knowing exactly how far they can push before someone starts asking too many questions. Of course, there are those who believe that the Mechanicus itself tolerates the Xenarites more than it lets on. After all, for all their talk of purity and devotion to the machine god, the tech priests are nothing if not pragmatic. The Mechanicus has a long history of using Xenos technology when it suits them, even if they would never admit it openly. There are whispers that certain Forge worlds have secret vaults filled with alien artifacts, studied in absolute secrecy to extract whatever advantage they can. Some believe that the Xenarites are simply the more extreme end of this hidden practice, pushing the limits further than most would dare. And then there's the most unsettling theory of all, that the Xenarites might actually be right. The Imperium is dying, locked in an endless war against threats it can barely comprehend. Its technology is stagnating, its enemies growing stronger with each passing century. If the Imperium continues to reject innovation in favor of blind dogma, how long before it simply collapses under its own weight? The Xenarites may be heretics in the eyes of the cult Mechanicus, but what if they are also the last hope for humanity's survival? Regardless of where the truth lies, one thing is certain: the Xenarites are not going anywhere. They have existed for millennia, working in the shadows, pushing the boundaries of what is possible. And as the Imperium faces its darkest days, one can't help but wonder how much of the Imperium's strength is already built on the very technology it claims to despise. The Xenarites are one of those groups that seem to exist in a strange twilight zone within the Adeptus Mechanicus, never fully accepted, never fully exiled. They are both part of the Mechanicum and outsiders at the same time, threading a thin, dangerous line between radical innovation and outright heresy. If the Adeptus Mechanicus were a monolithic cult, bound entirely by rigid doctrine, the Xenarites would have been purged long ago. But the truth is, the Mechanicus, despite its rigid facade, is far more fractured and full of contradictions than it likes to admit. And that's exactly why the Xenarites not only exist, but continue to thrive in the shadows. Unlike many of the Imperium's radical factions, the Xenarites aren't some hidden chaos-worshipping cabal or a collection of rogue scientists working on the fringes of the galaxy. They are tech priests, magi, and scholars, deeply embedded within the very structure of the Adeptus Mechanicus itself. Many hold significant ranks within the hierarchy, operating within Forge worlds and research facilities, their radical ideas carefully concealed behind layers of misdirection and bureaucratic obscurity. The cult, Mechanicus, demands absolute obedience to the will of the Omnissiah, but at the same time, it is obsessed with knowledge and technological advancement. And therein lies the paradox. The Xenarites are seen as heretics by many, yet they are also some of the most driven seekers of knowledge the Mechanicus has ever produced. What sets the Xenarites apart from their more orthodox brethren is their fundamental rejection of one of the core tenets of Mechanicus doctrine: the belief that human technology, particularly the relics of the Dark Age of technology, is the pinnacle of all innovation. To a traditional tech priest, the quest for knowledge is a holy pursuit, but it must be done within the strict parameters set by the cult Mechanicus. The standard template constructs, the sacred blueprints of ancient humanity, are considered the ultimate source of technological wisdom. Innovation is not about discovery, but about the careful ritualistic reapplication of knowledge that already exists. In a contrast, the Xenarites look at the galaxy and see something different. They see a universe filled with civilizations whose technology surpasses anything the Imperium has at its disposal, and they ask the forbidden question: why should humanity limit itself to the past when the future is right in front of them? This is where the Xenarites become dangerous, at least from the perspective of their fellow tech priests. It's one thing to study Xenos technology out of curiosity or even tactical necessity. The Ordo Xenos of the Inquisition does it all the time, albeit with extreme caution and strict protocols to prevent contamination. But the Xenarites don't just study alien technology, they seek to integrate it. They want to break it down, understand it, replicate it, and improve upon it. And this, to the Mechanicus, is an unforgivable sin. To fully grasp why this is so controversial, you have to understand the level of religious dogma that governs every aspect of the Adeptus Mechanicus. To them, machines are not mere tools. They are divine constructs, each with a machine spirit that must be appeased. Every ritual, every sacred incantation, every tiny procedure in maintaining or operating technology is part of a grand theological system. To mix human technology with alien technology is not just an affront to their beliefs. It is seen as corrupting the divine order. The fact that Xenos races can build machines that defy Mechanicus logic only makes it worse. If a Necron Gauss weapon can vaporize a target at the molecular level, if an Eldar Wraithbone construct can reshape itself seemingly at will, what does that say about the supposed supremacy of human engineering? The Mechanicus cannot allow these questions to be asked, because the answers might shatter the entire foundation of their faith. And yet, despite the overwhelming opposition they face, the Xenarites endure. They are not a single unified faction, but a loose collection of cells, individuals, and secret cabals, scattered throughout the galaxy. Some Xenarites operate in the depths of Forge worlds, hiding their research beneath layers of secrecy, passing forbidden knowledge through encoded transmissions and concealed data vaults. Others work in the field, infiltrating alien ruins, striking deals with rogue traders and black market artifact dealers, always seeking the next breakthrough that could push their understanding further. The most extreme among them, those who go so deep into Xenos technology that they begin to question the superiority of humanity itself, often disappear entirely, vanishing into the void, rumored to have defected to alien factions or fallen to far darker influences. What makes the Xenarites particularly fascinating is how many different theories exist about their true role in the grand scheme of the Imperium. Some believe they are a far greater force than the Mechanicus lets on, a necessary evil that the higher-ups tolerate because they occasionally produce results too, are valuable to ignore. After all, even the most dogmatic Forge worlds have been known to reverse engineer Xenos technology when it suits them, though they would never publicly admit it. Others suspect that the Xenarites are merely the tip of the iceberg, that somewhere deep in the Mechanicus hierarchy, there are tech priests who secretly support their work, understanding that the only way for humanity to survive is to embrace what the Imperium refuses to acknowledge. And then, of course, there's the more unsettling possibility that the Xenarites might already wield far more alien technology than anyone realizes. If the Adeptus Mechanicus has been using Xenos knowledge in secret for centuries, how much of the Imperium's war machines, its infrastructure, its very way of life, is already dependent on the very heresy they claim to reject? Perhaps the only real difference between the Xenarites and the rest of the Mechanicus is that the Xenarites are honest about it. To understand why the Xenarites think the way they do, you have to look at the deeper history of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their beliefs didn't just come out of nowhere. These ideas have been simmering beneath the surface of the cult Mechanicus for thousands of years. In many ways, the Xenarites are less of a radical anomaly and more of an inevitable byproduct of the Mechanicus's greatest contradiction, their obsession with technological progress, shackled by an almost religious fear of true innovation. The cult Mechanicus was built on a paradox. The tech priests worship the machine god, seeing all knowledge as divine, Yet they are bound by the ancient laws of the Martian priesthood, which prohibit them from creating anything truly new. The entire organization revolves around the standard template constructs, fragments of ancient human technology that they believe were gifted by the machine god in the distant past. To them, anything that deviates from these sacred designs is an affront to the divine order. And yet, the galaxy is filled with technology that far surpasses what the Imperium can produce. Even within their own history, the Mechanicus knows that mankind once wielded technology on a scale beyond anything they can comprehend today. This is where the seeds of the Xenarite philosophy were planted. There have always been those within the Mechanicus who question whether blind adherence to dogma is truly the best path forward. They look at the Imperium's failing technology, the slow degradation of once great machines, and they ask, why must we cling to the past when the future is right in front of us? The earliest known Xenarite philosophies likely trace back to the Age of Strife, the dark millennia before the Imperium was even born. During that time, humanity was shattered, its once mighty civilizations cut off from one another. The forge worlds of the Adeptus Mechanicus were some of the few bastions of technological stability in this era, but even they struggled to survive. It was a time of desperation, and desperate people take desperate measures. Some tech priests, faced with extinction, turned to whatever technology they could find, including alien artifacts. This was not yet heresy, not in the strict sense, because there was no Imperium to call it so. It was simply survival. Then came the Great Crusade, and with it, the imperial truth, a doctrine that saw all gods, all religious beliefs, as mere superstition. The Emperor tolerated the Mechanicum, but only because he needed them. The cult Mechanicus was allowed to keep its faith in the machine god, but it had to fall in line with imperial policy, and that meant rejecting alien influence entirely. The Imperium of man was built on the idea of human supremacy, mankind above all, Xenos as either tools to be used or threats to be exterminated. The Mechanicus, in turn, had to purge any traces of Xenos knowledge from their archives. But beliefs don't just vanish overnight. Those tech priests who had spent centuries studying alien technologies didn't suddenly stop thinking about what they had learned. They simply went underground. This is likely where the Xenarites, as a distinct faction, first took shape. While the rest of the Mechanicus aligned itself with the Imperium's rigid xenophobia, the Xenarites continued their work in secret. They became a hidden network of researchers, scavengers, and experimenters seeking out Xenos artifacts, studying them in the shadows, always pushing the limits of what was considered acceptable. Some historians and fan theories even suggest that the Xenarites may have been responsible for certain key technological advancements within the Imperium, advancements that were later disguised as rediscoveries of lost human knowledge. After all, how many times in Imperial history has some forgotten STC pattern been miraculously uncovered just when it was needed most? How many of these so-called rediscoveries were actually the result of radical tech priests working behind the scenes, blending alien knowledge with human ingenuity, then passing it off as something ancient and sanctioned? But the real turning point for the Xenarites came after the Horus heresy. The Mechanicus had already been shaken to its core, divided between those who remained loyal to the Imperium and those who followed Horus into damnation. Many forge worlds were left in ruins, their technological wonders either destroyed or lost. This was another moment of desperation, and once again, the Xenarites saw an opportunity. With so much knowledge lost, was it not time to finally break free from the shackles of dogma? Was it not time to seek new sources of enlightenment, even if those sources were alien? From that point on, the Xenarites became a permanent, if unofficial, part of the Mechanicus. They were no longer just a loose group of radicals. By now, they had their own hidden research facilities, their own clandestine networks, their own secret alliances. Some operated within the Imperium, carefully navigating the labyrinthine politics of the Forge worlds, using their influence to keep the Inquisition at bay. Others worked in the fringes of the galaxy, traveling with rogue traders, making pacts with the unthinkable, all in the name of discovery. The question, then, is whether they were ever truly wrong. The Imperium of man is failing, that much is clear. Its technology is breaking down, its understanding of even its own machines is eroding. Every day, more knowledge is lost, more devices fall into disrepair, more ancient wonders become nothing more than half-functional relics. The Imperium prides itself on its faith in the machine god, yet that same faith has left it unable to move forward. Meanwhile, the Xenarites, for all their heresies, have never stopped pushing the boundaries. They are not bound by the past. They are seeking the future. And maybe, just maybe, they've already found it. The Imperium is built on strict laws, rigid hierarchies, and an all-consuming fear of anything that deviates from its established doctrine. But even the most unyielding institutions have cracks, and the Xenarites have become experts at slipping through them. When it comes to acquiring Xenos technology, they don't just rely on one method. They adapt, manipulate, and exploit every opportunity they can find. And in a galaxy as vast and chaotic as the 41st millennium, there is no shortage of ways to get their hands on forbidden knowledge. One of the most common sources of Xenos artifacts is through illegal excavations. The galaxy is littered with the ruins of long-dead civilizations, places where ancient war machines still lie dormant, where forgotten relics hum with energy that has long outlived their creators. Many of these sites are officially off-limits, either because they have been declared heretical by the Inquisition or because they are too dangerous for the average Imperial expedition. But for a Xenarite, danger is just a part of the process. They send out covert excavation teams, often disguised as simple salvage crews or sanctioned research expeditions, using false paperwork and forged authorization codes to gain access to restricted worlds. Sometimes they work through intermediaries, unwitting planetary governors, corrupt Mechanicus officials, or even mercenary groups who don't ask too many questions. Then there are the rogue traders. If there's one thing the Imperium is good at, it's creating loopholes, and the rogue trader dynasties are one of the biggest. These individuals are given an almost absurd level of freedom, their ancient warrant of trade allowing them to travel beyond Imperial space, make contact with Xenos civilizations, and even establish their own trade networks in the lawless void. Officially, they are expected to use this power to serve the Imperium, bringing back valuable resources and intelligence. Unofficially, many of them use their status to smuggle goods that would get anyone else executed on sight. For the right price, a rogue trader can deliver things that the Mechanicus would never admit to wanting. Necron artifacts pried from forgotten tombs, reverse-engineered Tau weaponry, even Eldar Wraithbone constructs that defy conventional understanding. The relationship between Xenarites and rogue traders is a complicated one. Some rogue traders see them as just another client, a source of wealth and patronage in a dangerous galaxy. Others are more ideologically aligned, believing that the Imperium's rigid laws are only holding humanity back. These traders don't just supply the Xenarites with alien relics, they actively work with them, arranging expeditions into forbidden territories, setting up hidden laboratories in uncharted space, even recruiting specialists from beyond the Imperium's borders. There are rumors that certain rogue trader houses have entire fleets dedicated to the Xenarite cause, operating in the deep void where no Imperial authority can reach them. Of course, there's an even darker side to all of this. Some Xenarites don't just scavenge alien technology, they seek out the aliens themselves. This is where things get truly dangerous, because the line between studying Xenos technology and outright heresy becomes razor thin. It's one thing to acquire a discarded tow battlesui from a battlefield. It's another thing entirely to negotiate directly with a tow Earthcast scientist, trading Imperial resources for blueprints and schematics. Some Xenarites have been known to go this far, engaging in secret dealings with alien species, always careful to keep their activities hidden from prying Imperial eyes. And then there are the extremists, the ones who go beyond mere trade and begin to integrate themselves into Xenos societies. The most unsettling stories tell of tech priests who have abandoned their humanity altogether, merging their consciousness with Necron technology, or becoming so immersed in Eldar psychocircuitry that they begin to think like them. These are the ones who truly terrify the Mechanicus, the ones who don't just want to use alien knowledge, but who begin to believe that humanity's way is not the only way. The real question is just how much the Mechanicus actually knows about all of this. The Adeptus Mechanicus is not a monolithic entity. It is a sprawling, fractured organization with countless internal factions, rivalries, and power struggles. It's entirely possible that some Forge worlds are well aware of the Xenarite's activities, but choose to look the other way, either out of necessity or silent agreement with their goals. After all, for all their religious zeal, the Mechanicus is still a pragmatic organization. If a radical tech priest develops a new weapon or discovers a way to enhance Imperial technology, are they truly going to reject it if it gives them an advantage? There are even theories that certain high-ranking magi secretly support the Xenarites, using them as unofficial research, but divisions, pushing boundaries that cannot be explored openly. The Imperium loves to pretend that it is absolute in its laws, but history has shown time and time again that it will break its own rules when convenient. If the Xenarites were truly an existential threat to the Mechanicus, wouldn't they have been eradicated by now? The fact that they continue to operate suggests that, at some level, the Mechanicus knows it needs them. But necessity does not mean safety. For every Xenarite who manages to hide their work, there are others who are discovered, hunted, and purged. The Inquisition, especially the Ordo Xenos, has spent centuries trying to root them out, conducting mass purges, destroying research facilities, and executing anyone suspected of consorting with aliens. The only thing keeping the Xenarites alive is their ability to stay ahead of the hunt, to keep their operations hidden, to cover their tracks so well that even the most paranoid Inquisitor can't prove their existence. Yet, despite all the risks, despite the constant threat of annihilation, the Xenarites endure. They endure because they believe in something greater than fear. They endure because they know that, for all the Imperium's talk of purity, its survival depends on things it refuses to acknowledge. They endure because, in the end, knowledge is the only thing that truly matters. When you start messing with Xenos technology, things are bound to go wrong. That's the risk every Xenarite takes. The fine line between pushing the boundaries of knowledge and unleashing something that was never meant to exist in human hands. Some experiments have yielded incredible results, but others? Absolute disasters. The kind that get entire research facilities purged, entire planets wiped from records, entire Forge worlds burned to the ground to make sure no trace remains. There are stories whispered among tech priests and inquisitors alike of experiments that pushed too far. One of the most infamous cases comes from a forgotten research station in the Segmentum Obscurus. No official records exist, but scattered reports from rogue traders and black market information brokers suggest that a group of Xenarites had acquired a cache of Necron technology. Not just weapons or trinkets, actual functioning Necron artifacts, the kind that pulsed with an intelligence no human could comprehend. What happened next is unclear, but the end result was a system-wide communication blackout, followed by an emergency declaration from the local Forge world. When Imperial forces arrived, the entire station was gone. Not destroyed, gone. No wreckage, no debris, no bodies. Just an empty void where the installation had once been. The Mechanicus refuses to discuss what happened, but some suspect that whatever technology they activated didn't just kill them, it erased them entirely, removing them from time or reality itself. Then there's the case of the Forge world of Xenarite, an industrial powerhouse that had been experimenting with Eldar Wraithbone technology. Wraithbone is unlike any material humanity has ever worked with. It's psychoreactive, capable of being shaped through thought and intention rather than traditional engineering. The Xenarite studying it believed they could integrate it into Imperial machines, creating constructs that could self-repair, even react in real time to battlefield conditions. But Wraithbone is more than just a substance. It's tied to the Eldar's psychic webway, connected to energies that humans barely understand. The moment the first test was conducted, something went wrong. Machines began to change, not in the mechanical sense, but in ways that defied logic. Servitors fused with their equipment. Mechanicus priests reported hearing whispers in the static, and then one by one, the tech priests began disappearing. Not dying, just vanishing, as if pulled into some unseen dimension. Within days, Xenarite was in full lockdown. The last transmission from the world was garbled, but a single phrase could be made out through the interference. "We are not alone." The Inquisition declared the entire planet exterminatus shortly after. And then there's the ultimate horror, experiments that lead not just to disaster, but to outright heresy. One of the darkest rumors surrounding the Xenarites is that some have experimented with Tyranid biotech, attempting to merge Imperial war machines with the adaptive organic efficiency of the hive mind's creations. The idea is terrifying. Imagine a Titan that doesn't require a crew, but instead grows its own nerve structure, responding instinctively to threats like a living creature. Imagine power armor that regenerates wounds, bolters that never need reloading because they generate their own ammunition. The potential is limitless, but so is the danger. Tyranid biology is not just alien, it is designed to consume, to spread, to evolve. There are rumors of entire research facilities that became nothing more than breeding grounds for Tyranid infection, their tech priests unknowingly transforming into the very monsters they sought to control. One of the most debated incidents among fan theorists is the so-called Red Vaults of Mars. Some claim that deep beneath the surface of Mars, in the most secure vaults of the Adeptus Mechanicus, there exist remnants of Xenarite experiments too dangerous to be destroyed. Necron constructs fused with Imperial circuitry, Tau drones integrated into Mechanicus command structures, even rumors of something far worse. War machines so advanced that they defy categorization, things that should not exist but do. Some believe that the highest-ranking members of the Mechanicus tolerate these horrors because they know that one day the Imperium might need them. Others believe that even the Fabricator General himself fears what lies in those vaults. The scariest part of all of this? These are just the stories that people know about. If this is what has slipped through the cracks, imagine what has been completely erased from history. The Adeptus Mechanicus is a paranoid institution, one that is ruthless when it comes to eliminating threats to its control. If an experiment was truly disastrous, if it unleashed something that could shake the Imperium to its core, would we ever even hear about it? Or would it simply disappear, buried under a mountain of secrecy, another horror locked away in the dark corners of a galaxy that refuses to stop reminding humanity just how small and fragile it really is? If there's one thing the Adeptus Mechanicus fears more than ignorance, it's deviation. The entire foundation of their faith is built on the idea that technology is not meant to be discovered but recovered, a divine inheritance from the distant past passed down by the Omnissiah and recorded in the sacred standard template constructs. To them, progress isn't about creating something new, but about unearthing what was already perfected long ago. And this is why the Xenarites are such a fundamental threat. They don't just challenge the Mechanicus on a practical level, they challenge the very way the Mechanicus understands reality. The cult Mechanicus sees the universe in absolute terms. Humanity is the chosen species, the Omnissiah's children, and all sacred knowledge was granted to them in the distant past. Any attempt to integrate Xenos technology is not just an act of heresy, it's an insult to the machine god. To even suggest that alien species might have superior engineering is to question the divine order of the universe. The Adeptus Mechanicus needs to believe that all the answers already exist within humanity's grasp. Because if that belief is shattered, then everything, their hierarchy, their faith, their very identity, starts to fall apart. This is why the dogma of Mars is so unyielding. The Mechanicus clings to its rigid laws not just out of religious devotion, but out of fear. They know that the Imperium is failing. They know that its technology is decaying. They know that their understanding of their own machines is incomplete at best and dangerously inadequate at worst. But the moment they admit this, the moment they acknowledge that there might be something better out there, the entire Mechanicus risks splintering apart. The cult's strength comes from its unity, from its absolute belief that the quest for knowledge is a holy mission with a clear set of rules. The Xenarites don't just break those rules. They prove that the rules don't work. And yet, the Mechanicus isn't entirely blind to the contradictions in its own faith. The truth is, they do use Xenos technology, even if they refuse to acknowledge it. There are entire sectors of the Imperium that rely on technology that has no clear human origin. Forge worlds have been known to experiment with Necron alloys, Tau power cells, even Eldar energy fields, always under the justification that these are merely reclaimed or purified innovations, cleansed of their Xenos corruption through ritual and modification. It's a fragile excuse, but it allows them to maintain their self-imposed illusion of purity. The Xenarites, however, don't play this game. They don't pretend that they are simply rediscovering lost human knowledge. They openly embrace the idea that alien civilizations have something worth studying. And this is what makes them truly dangerous to the Mechanicus. If their ideas spread, if more tech priests begin to question the rigid laws of Mars, the cult Mechanicus could fracture in ways that would be impossible to repair. Some theorists believe that this is precisely why the Mechanicus has never completely eradicated the Xenarites. For all their blasphemy, they represent something that even the most dogmatic tech priest secretly fears: the possibility that the cult Mechanicus might be wrong. The Adeptus Mechanicus operates in absolutes, but the Xenarites introduce uncertainty, and uncertainty is poison to a system that thrives on an unwavering faith. At the same time, the Mechanicus needs an enemy like the Xenarites. They serve as a convenient scapegoat, a way to maintain control. Whenever a Forge World's experiments go too far, whenever the Inquisition starts asking uncomfortable questions about a research project, the blame can always be placed on radical elements, on rogue magi who defied the sacred tenets of the machine god. It's a way to maintain plausible deniability, to preserve the illusion that the Mechanicus is still pure. But how long can this contradiction last? The Imperium is in crisis. The enemies of mankind are growing stronger, and the technology that the Imperium relies on is getting older, failing, becoming increasingly irreplaceable. The dogma of Mars might have kept the Mechanicus stable for thousands of years, but stability is not the same as survival. The Mechanicus might hate the Xenarites, but deep down, they may also need them. Because if the future of the Imperium is truly at stake, the real question isn't whether the Mechanicus can afford to tolerate the Xenarites. It's whether they can afford not to. The Imperium of man is not kind to those who step out of line. In a galaxy where deviation from the established order is seen as heresy, the Xenarites are walking, talking blasphemy. It's not just that they defy the dogma of the Adeptus Mechanicus, they spit in the face of everything the Imperium stands for. And for that, they are hunted. The Inquisition, particularly the Ordo Xenos, considers the Xenarites one of the most insidious threats within the Imperium. To them, these tech priests are no different from radical cultists or outright traitors. They traffic in forbidden knowledge, consort with alien civilizations, and tamper with things that should never be in human hands. The worst part? They do it from within the Imperium's own institutions. Unlike obvious heretics or Xenos-loving separatists, the Xenarites don't operate from distant void stations or hidden strongholds in the warp. They are right there, inside Forge Worlds, inside research facilities, inside the very heart of the Mechanicus. This makes them incredibly difficult to root out. The Inquisition has purged entire laboratories, burned entire manufactorums, and executed whole orders of tech priests on suspicion of Xenarite influence. But no matter how many they kill, more always emerge. That's because the Xenarites are not a single organization with a clear hierarchy or leadership. They are a network, a loose collection of radicals who work in secret, each cell independent from the others. Even if one is discovered, the rest continue their work elsewhere. One of the most infamous purges happened on the Forge world of Hypatia Prime. An entire sect of tech priests was found to be experimenting with Necron phase technology, attempting to integrate it into Imperial teleportation systems. When the Ordo Xenos arrived, they didn't just execute the tech priests. They declared the entire a planet compromised. The Inquisition sanctioned a full-scale purge, reducing entire manufactorums to slag, wiping centuries of technological progress from existence. But despite the brutal efficiency of the operation, whispers persisted. Some claimed that key members of the Xenarite cabal had escaped, taking their research with them. Others suggested that even some loyal tech priests had secretly been using Xenos knowledge and had framed the Xenarites to cover their own tracks. And that's the real problem for the Imperium. The Xenarites force uncomfortable questions, ones that even the most hardline Inquisitor can't always answer. How much of the Imperium's own war machine is already tainted by alien knowledge? If the Mechanicus is so pure, why do they keep finding and using these forbidden technologies? If every tech priest who studies Xenos artifacts is a heretic, then why do some Forge worlds get away with doing exactly that under the pretense of strategic necessity? There are even those within the Inquisition itself who don't fully agree with the purges. Radical Inquisitors, those who believe that the Imperium's survival must come before its dogma, sometimes find themselves making uneasy alliances with Xenarites. They may not fully trust them, but they understand that knowledge is power, and that sometimes the line between heresy and necessity is thinner than the Imperium wants to admit. And then there are the Mechanicus loyalists, the tech priests who hate the Xenarites, not because of any inquisitorial pressure, but because they see them as a threat to the purity of the cult Mechanicus. These are the hardliners, the ones who believe in the absolute sanctity of the machine god's wisdom. To them, the Xenarites are not just misguided, they are dangerous deviants who risk contaminating all of Mars with their blasphemous ideas. They are the ones who root out heretics from within, who sabotage Xenarite experiments before they can bear fruit, who report their own brethren to the authorities to ensure that the will of the Omnissiah remains unchallenged. But despite all of this, the Xenarites endure. They always have, and they always will. The Imperium can hunt them, the Mechanicus can despise them, the Inquisition can burn them from history. But as long as the Imperium stagnates, as long as it refuses to move forward, there will always be those who ask why. And those who ask why are dangerous. Because once you start asking that question, it's only a matter of time before you start looking for answers. The Adeptus Mechanicus loves to pretend that it is the guardian of pure, untainted knowledge, that it alone preserves the divine wisdom of the machine god, untouched by the corrupting influence of Xenos innovation. But anyone who looks closely enough, who digs just a little deeper, will see the cracks in that illusion. The truth is, the Mechanicus is hiding something. Maybe even everything. There have always been rumors, whispered among those who dare, to question the official doctrine that Mars itself is not as pure as it claims to be. The Mechanicus may publicly denounce the Xenarites as dangerous radicals, but what if they are only a convenient scapegoat? What if the highest-ranking magi of the cult Mechanicus have always studied Xenos technology just in secret, hiding their own experiments while condemning anyone who does the same without their approval? One of the most persistent theories revolves around the so-called red vaults of Mars, sealed chambers buried deep beneath the surface, locked away behind security systems so ancient and complex that even the Fabricator General himself might not have full access. These vaults, if they exist, are said to house technologies that the Imperium should not possess. Necron constructs that still hum with impossible energy, captured Tau AI systems locked in endless calculations, Eldar psycho-reactive machinery that shifts and reshapes itself when touched. Some claim that even Tyrannid, biomatter, has been stored here, studied under conditions so secret that not even the Inquisition has been allowed to interfere. The official stance of the Mechanicus is that any Xenos artifacts recovered are either destroyed or studied only to understand the enemy's weaknesses. But that explanation doesn't hold up when you consider some of the things the Mechanicus has been able to do. For an organization that supposedly refuses to use alien technology, they have a suspicious number of innovations that don't seem to have any clear human origin. Take the Mechanicus's understanding of phase weaponry, an area of research that should be impossible given how little humanity supposedly knows about Necron technology. And yet, there are Forge worlds that have developed weapons that function in eerily similar ways. Is this just coincidence? Or is it proof that somewhere, in the depths of Mechanicus research facilities, Xenos technology is being taken apart and repurposed for Imperial use? And what about the Blackstone fortresses? These immense space stations are of clear Xenos origin, built by an unknown species long before the Imperium even existed. The Mechanicus was given control of several of them during the Great Crusade, and while some were lost over the millennia, others remained in Imperial hands. The question is, how much of their original function did the Mechanicus actually figure out? And if they did unlock their secrets, did they ever share that knowledge with the rest of the Imperium, or did they keep it to themselves, hoarding forbidden technology while preaching against the dangers of Xenos influence? Some even go so far as to suggest that the Mechanicus has, at various points in history, made deals with Xenos species. Not public alliances, of course. The Imperium would never tolerate such heresy, but quiet, hidden exchanges, the kind that happen in the dark corners of the galaxy where no Inquisitorial eyes can see. Rogue traders have spoken of Forge worlds that seem to possess strangely advanced shielding technologies, ones that bear more than a passing resemblance to Tau energy fields. There are scattered reports of Eldar ships appearing near Mechanicus expeditions, not to attack, but to exchange something. What exactly, no one knows. The biggest and most unsettling theory of all is the idea that the Mechanicus needs the Xenarites, even as they denounce them. What if all the purges, the Inquisitorial hunts, the relentless suppression of their research, what if it's all just for show? A way to maintain the illusion of purity while secretly benefiting from the very knowledge they claim to reject. Some theorists believe that high-ranking members of the Mechanicus allow the Xenarites to exist because they provide a necessary function. They take the risks, they make the breakthroughs, they push the boundaries that the cult Mechanicus officially refuses to cross. And when they find something truly valuable, maybe it doesn't always get erased. Maybe sometimes it just quietly disappears, taken by those with the power to keep it hidden. Because when you really think about it, the Mechanicus's greatest strength is also its greatest hypocrisy. It worships knowledge. It treats the acquisition of technology as a divine pursuit. And yet, it sets arbitrary limits on what kind of knowledge is acceptable. The Xenarites reject those limits. But what if the Mechanicus itself secretly agrees with them? What if, deep down, the highest orders of Mars understand that their own survival depends on breaking the very rules they enforce on everyone else? We may never know for certain. The Mechanicus is nothing if not careful, and those who dig too deep into its secrets tend to disappear. But one thing is clear. If the cult Mechanicus truly practiced what it preached, if it had never touched Xenos knowledge, then the Imperium's technology would have decayed into nothing centuries ago. So the real question isn't whether they've been using forbidden knowledge. It's how much they've already gotten away with. The Imperium of man is dying. That's not speculation, that's a fact. Its technology is breaking down, its war machines are growing obsolete, and its entire civilization is built on a foundation of decaying relics that no one truly understands anymore. The galaxy is moving forward, but the Imperium refuses to evolve. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Are the Xenarites humanity's last chance to escape stagnation, or are they simply accelerating its inevitable downfall? The argument in favor of the Xenarites is simple. The Imperium is locked in a war against enemies that are smarter, faster, and more technologically advanced. The Tau are rapidly innovating, developing new weaponry and battlefield tactics at a rate that the Imperium cannot match. The Eldar wield technology so advanced that it might as well be magic. The Necrons have access to sciences that defy human comprehension, capable of bending reality itself to their will. Meanwhile, the Imperium is still mass-producing the same tanks, the same weapons, the same power armor that it has for thousands of years, sometimes without even knowing how those things truly work. If humanity wants to survive in this brutal galaxy, it needs to adapt, it needs to learn, and it needs to stop pretending that everything Xenos is inherently evil. Xenarites see themselves as the ones willing to do what is necessary. They believe that knowledge is neither good nor evil. It is simply a tool, one that must be wielded with intelligence and caution. To them, refusing to use Xenos technology is not just ignorant, it's suicidal. The Imperium is at war with beings that are beyond its understanding, yet it refuses to understand them. The Xenarites believe that this arrogance is what will doom humanity in the end. The only way forward is to stop clinging to the past and start looking toward the future. Even if that future is built on ideas the Imperium refuses to acknowledge. But of course, the counterargument is just as strong. There is a reason the Imperium fears Xenos technology, and it's not just blind superstition. The galaxy is full of weapons, machines, and artifacts that operate on rules humanity was never meant to understand. Some of them are simply too dangerous, too unpredictable, too corrupting. The Necron's mastery of physics and time might seem like an irresistible prize, but can a human mind truly comprehend the things that Necron cryptechs have created? The Eldar's Wraithbone constructs are elegant and efficient, but they are tied to the psychic energies of a race that is fundamentally different from humanity. And then there's the Tyranids. Biotech so perfect, so terrifyingly efficient, that any attempt to harness it risks bringing the hive mind itself into Imperial systems. There is also the danger of ideology. The Xenarites don't just study Xenos technology, they study Xenos ideas. That's the part that makes the Imperium truly afraid. Because what happens when a tech priest starts asking the wrong questions? What happens when they start wondering if the Eldar's way of thinking is actually more logical than the cult Mechanicus? What if they start believing that the Tau Empire's philosophy of progress and unity is actually superior to the Imperium's brutal feudalism? What if they look at the Necrons and see something terrifyingly efficient, an existence where biology itself has been discarded in favor of pure, eternal machine perfection? There is a reason so many Xenarites disappear. Some are hunted down and purged by the Mechanicus or the Inquisition, but others simply vanish. Some say they flee into the void, continuing their research far from Imperial oversight. Others claim that some of them go even further, joining Xenos civilizations outright. If a tech priest spends enough time studying the ways of the Tau, how long before they start thinking like them? If they spend enough time inside a Necron tomb, how long before they start seeing the Imperium as nothing more than a primitive relic of a dying age? This is the true risk of the Xenarites. They aren't just challenging the Imperium's technology, they are challenging its identity. If they are right, then the entire foundation of the cult Mechanicus is wrong. If they are right, then the Imperium's refusal to evolve is not just a flaw, it is a death sentence. But if they are wrong, then they are playing with forces they cannot control, forces that could consume humanity before it even realizes the mistake it has made. So what is the future of the Imperium? Will it eventually be forced to accept the truth, to embrace the knowledge it has spent so long rejecting? Or will it double down on its dogma, crushing every radical, burning every trace of Xenos influence, until there is nothing left but stagnation and decay? The scariest thought is that there may be no choice at all. The Imperium has to change. It can't survive in its current state forever. And if the Xenarites are the only ones willing to push that change forward, then maybe, just maybe, they are not the heretics that Mars and Terra make them out to be. Maybe in the end, they are the only ones who truly understand what must be done. When it comes to the Xenarites, the official Imperial records tell one story, but the fan theories and myths paint a much more complicated and far more interesting picture. There are endless debates about how deep their influence really runs, whether they are truly a persecuted radical sect or just the visible tip of something much larger, something the Imperium refuses to acknowledge. And then there's the biggest question of all. If the Xenarites are so dangerous, so heretical, then how have they survived for so long? One of the most persistent theories is that there are high-ranking magi within the Adeptus Mechanicus who secretly protect them. The idea here is that while the Mechanicus publicly denounces the Xenarites, there are those in the highest echelons of power who understand that their work is necessary. Maybe they don't openly endorse Xenos experimentation, but they know that the Imperium's survival depends on more than just faith. It depends on knowledge, even the forbidden kind. This would explain why, despite centuries of purges, the Xenarites always seem to resurface. Maybe they're not just avoiding extermination. Maybe they have protectors in places even the Inquisition wouldn't dare investigate. Then there's the theory that some Forge worlds are fully Xenarite, but they hide it behind a facade of orthodoxy. It's not as crazy as it sounds. The Imperium is massive, and while Mars is the heart of the Adeptus Mechanicus, there are countless Forge worlds spread across the galaxy, each with its own traditions and power struggles. Some theorists believe that there are entire Forge worlds that secretly engage in Xenos research, disguising their true work behind layers of false records and staged public rituals. Maybe they even have deals with rogue traders to smuggle in alien artifacts, keeping their operations just hidden enough to avoid suspicion. And speaking of rogue traders, there's a whole separate set of theories suggesting that some of the most powerful rogue trader dynasties have long-standing agreements with the Xenarites. These are the kinds of families that have been operating outside the Imperium's strict laws for millennia, with connections that go beyond even the reach of the Inquisition. What if some of these dynasties act as intermediaries, ferrying Xenos technology into the hands of Xenarite tech priests in exchange for advanced Mechanicus creations? What if there are entire black market trade networks built around the quiet exchange of alien knowledge, hidden within the legal loopholes of the Imperium's bureaucracy? And then there's the more outlandish stuff, the theories that push the boundaries of what even the most radical fans are willing to consider. One of the wilder ideas floating around is that the Fabricator General of Mars himself knows about the Xenarites and is using them as a secret research division. The idea is that while the public face of the Mechanicus remains devoted to the cult's strict dogma, the true rulers of Mars have a completely different agenda behind the scenes. If this were true, it would mean that the entire war against the Xenarites is a carefully controlled game, a way to keep their research hidden while maintaining the illusion of imperial purity. And of course, there's always the possibility that the Xenarites have gone even further than anyone realizes. What if some of them have left the Imperium entirely? There are rumors of hidden Mechanicus enclaves in the galactic void, places where radical tech priests conduct experiments far away from Imperial oversight. Some even believe that there are Xenarites who have abandoned humanity altogether, aligning themselves with Xenos factions in pursuit of greater knowledge. Could there be Xenarite enclaves operating within the Tau Empire, sharing their knowledge with the Earth caste? Could some of them have deciphered Necron technology to the point where they have unlocked secrets even the cryptex don't fully understand? The most unsettling theory, though, is that the Xenarites are not just a faction within the Imperium, but a symptom of something much larger, a sign that the Adeptus Mechanicus itself is on the verge of breaking apart. The cult Mechanicus is held together by tradition, by ritual, by the sheer force of its own belief system. But what happens when enough tech priests start questioning that belief? What happens when the secrets of Mars are no longer enough to keep the Mechanicus unified? Some fans speculate that the rise of the Xenarites is not just an anomaly, it is a warning, a sign that the Mechanicus is heading toward a schism, one that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Whether any of these theories are true or not, one thing is certain. The Xenarites are more than just a handful of rogue tech priests playing with dangerous toys. They are a reflection of something deeper, a crack in the foundation of the Imperium itself. And no matter how hard the Inquisition or the Adeptus Mechanicus tries to erase them, they always return. Because at the end of the day, they are asking the question that the Imperium cannot afford to answer. What if the future doesn't belong to those who cling to the past? What if it belongs to those who dare to change? The Xenarites are one of the most fascinating, terrifying, and downright dangerous factions lurking in the shadows of the Imperium. They are radicals, heretics, visionaries, depending on who you ask. To some, they are the last hope for human progress, the only ones willing to push past the stagnant traditions of the Adeptus Mechanicus. To others, they are a ticking time bomb, a threat to the very fabric of the Imperium's survival. And yet, despite centuries of purges, despite the relentless efforts of the Inquisition and the most dogmatic Forge worlds, the Xenarites refuse to disappear. If anything, they seem to be growing more relevant with every passing century. It all comes down to the fundamental question of whether humanity can afford to cling to its traditions in a galaxy that does not wait for the weak. The Imperium thrives on stability, on predictability, on a rigid structure that has kept it alive for 10,000 years. But is survival the same as progress? Because while the Imperium fights to maintain its iron grip on the past, the rest of the galaxy is moving forward. The Tau are expanding their reach with each new innovation. The Necrons are waking up with technologies so advanced that they might as well be gods. And the Eldar, well, despite their declining empire, they still possess weapons and machines that humanity can barely comprehend. Meanwhile, the Imperium is mass-producing war gear from blueprints that are older than most civilizations. So, are the Xenarites right? Should the Imperium abandon its outdated fear of Xenos technology and finally embrace the innovations that could keep it from crumbling under its own weight? Or is that just the first step towards something far worse? The loss of everything that makes humanity human? The Mechanicus doesn't just fear Xenos technology because of superstition. They fear it because it changes those who use it. The way a Tau battlesuit operates is fundamentally different from a Space Marine's power armor. The way Necron energy fields function has nothing to do with the Imperium's understanding of physics. Once you start thinking like the enemy, once you start adapting to their ways, how long before you stop being what you were in the first place? And that's the real danger. Not just heresy in the religious sense, but something even deeper. The potential for a shift so profound that the Imperium might not survive it. Imagine an Adeptus Mechanicus that fully embraces Xenos knowledge. Imagine Forge worlds no longer bound by the traditions of Mars, no longer believing in the machine god, but instead evolving into something entirely new. What does that look like? Is that still the Imperium, or is it the beginning of something else, something unrecognizable? That's the terrifying thing about the Xenarites. They are not an invading army, they are not an external threat. They are a seed, a whisper in the dark, a question that once asked cannot be unasked. What if they are right? What if the Imperium is wrong? What if the only way to win this war for survival is to become something else entirely? Of course, none of this has a simple answer. That's why the debate about the Xenarites is so interesting. Are they humanity's best chance, or its greatest weakness? Are they the inevitable future, or a dangerous deviation that must be crushed before it spreads? And more importantly, how much of what they've created, what they've discovered, is already in use without anyone realizing it? How much of the Imperium's technology is already tainted by the very heresy it claims to despise? At the end of the day, the Xenarites are not going anywhere. They will keep working in the shadows, keep pushing the limits of what's possible, keep forcing the Imperium to confront the questions it desperately wants to ignore. Maybe one day, they will be fully eradicated. Or maybe, just maybe, they will be the ones writing the next chapter of human history. But what do you think? Is the Imperium doomed if it refuses to adapt, or is that adaptation the very thing that will destroy it from within? Should the Xenarites be seen as heroes, villains, or something far more complicated? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay vigilant, because in the grim darkness of the far future, nothing is ever as simple as it seems.